our school board meeting. See, moving on to our agenda, our approvals, deletions, additions. Dr. Bracco.
Thank you. You do have some revisions at your workstation along with accompanying materials, and they will be under Roman numeral 7B 1 and 2, 7C 1, and 7D 1.
So moved.
A motion from Dr. Malka, a second from Mr. Marshall. Any comments or questions regarding the approvals, deletions, or additions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Is there any correspondence, Ms. Suze?
No, there is none.
All right, thank you. Moving on to our liaison committee updates, and I'll start with Mr. Marshall.
Thank you. Personnel interview committee, there's been no activity on my behalf, so I'll call it thank you.
Thank you. Dr. Malka?
Yes, Lake Central Education Foundation. As always, we're looking for volunteers, and we're also looking for fundraisers, ways to make money. Just recently, as you remember, we gave out some grants, which was very nice and helpful. I do believe that some of our leaders from the Education Committee have put together little special items for our teachers for American Education Week. Is that right? Are you going to tell us about it? What would you like, President?
Can we hold it till public comment?
Sure.
Okay.
All right, very good. And legislative, I believe that Dr. Baracco has sent out some samples for us to look at, so if you want to peruse those and make any notations on those letters, that would be helpful. Okay?
Thank you. That it?
That's it.
Okay. Ms. Suze?
No, I have nothing for either of my committees.
Okay. And I have nothing for Dyer Parks or Dyer Redevelopment Committee this meeting. Moving on to our official school board business topics, our consent agenda, Dr. Baracco.
Thank you. Seek board approval of the minutes from the executive session and regular board meetings on November 4th and the executive session on November 5th. And finally, please approve the claims, payroll, and extracurricular expenditures you received in your packet.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Ms. Suze.
Second?
We have a second from Mr. Marshall. Any comments or questions regarding our consent agenda? Oh, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Now, any public comments regarding our action items? Hearing none, we will move on to our official school board business topics for this evening. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you. For my first item, I would like to briefly summarize the action that's going to take place tomorrow at the State House, what we have come to know as the Red for Ed Day. Tomorrow is the organizational day for the House and the Senate down in Indianapolis. And this movement sort of, as we were talking about it at lunch today, we think probably started in response to the vagueness on how to deal with the teacher appreciation grant, and would raises be held up because we're not sure what to do with the iLearn scores from spring of 19 rather. And then once the governor and the leadership from the General Assembly said, hey, we're going to do the hold harmless thing, those wheels were already in motion, and people started really thinking about what's been happening in Indiana in terms of public education. I've given you a front and back bulletized point of everything that I think has been going on and what's important. And I won't go through all those items, but I will say that 20 teachers at least from Lake Central, as well as myself, are going to attend tomorrow. We have two meetings set up in the morning, one with Senator Niemeyer and one with Representative Chung. Those two gentlemen, as you know, have the bulk of our territory for Lake Central. And we're going to go down to talk about some of the issues that are impacting us, but also other school corporations and public schools in Indiana. you know, we were fortunate enough to go back to our taxpayer and receive their approval for extra money to support our classroom activities. And again, we'll say thank you to our community for their support. It's very important. But had we not done so, or had we not been successful, well, we would have been in the same boat as many of those who have tried and been unsuccessful or not yet tried because their school board don't think it's right for their communities. And so there are many school districts across the state who have continued to give meager raises because they just don't have enough funding. So we're going to go down there to talk about some of those issues with our representatives and participate in the rally. But, you know, the money's important, but I want to make sure that everybody understands that there are other pieces to this that concern educators across the state. And probably the biggest thing I see is some of the things that come out of the General Assembly and other state leaders that I'll call it use teachers and blame educators for some of the ills of what's happening. And I don't think it's been fair. I think the damage it's done to morale has been significant. So we need to try to figure out how to work with our elected officials to be partners again and to work together to make the school systems across the state as strong as possible. So, as I said, there are at least 20 teachers going down. The other thing I want to share with the public tonight is, as we've been talking about this event with our teacher leadership, we are bringing to you tonight, under Terry's agenda, a list of 20 names to be approved for professional leave so that we can be represented at the State House tomorrow. And as of about 4 o'clock today, we had an additional 9 staff members who were seeking to take the day off, some maybe to go down to Indianapolis, some for personal business, and some probably scheduled doctor visits or so forth. So with 29 out, and if you figure on a normal day you'll get another 3 or 4, we can handle that number of absenteeisms and still have a productive day for our students. So I think it's important for our community to know that while some other area districts have canceled and they're making up their day later in the year, we didn't feel the need to do that. We also recognize that when we cancel school or close school, even like with weather, with little notice, it negatively impacts our families. And so we really wanted to try to avoid that if possible. We think we've had an honest discussion with our teachers and that most of them are going to be in attendance tomorrow, teaching as hard as they ever do. And so I wanted to share that with our board as well. I'd open it up for any questions you might have about anything that was on the sheet that I'd given you or anything I didn't say at this time about the Red for Ed Day at the State House.
Any questions for Dr. Rocco?
I really love this list. This is very detailed. The only thing I think you're missing on here, maybe, although, because I didn't read this clearly, is the lack of a state superintendent that's an educator. That would be the only thing, I think. So the new rules are that anybody could be the state superintendent for education, correct?
That is correct, but I'm still hopeful that they will select an educator for that. So it's probably not on there because I'm hoping that they don't pick a retired person from the private sector
Wow.
to try to run it.
Scares me.
Yeah,
Makes
that's
me
fair.
nervous. But very nice list.
Anyone else? Any comments for Dr. Rocco? No? Hearing none?
Okay,
Now,
so
do we
we'll
have to-
we'll
we have
try
to
to use.
take action on that, on this.
You have to take action on my trip.
Okay.
I move we accept Dr. Rocco's recommendation for the activity tomorrow.
Okay. There's a motion.
Second?
Mr. Marshall, second for Ms. Sues. Okay. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to just quickly review with you the legislative priorities that I sent to you in the packet, and what you had were the ISBA's list And these are the 2020 highlighted statements. And I think that there's a lot of stuff in there that, well, that was included in what I said earlier, but also some things that impact us directly. Of course, one of the things that catches your eye right off the bat is progressive and equitable funding of public schools. And there's a lot that goes into that, including, you know, we've said for years we'd like to see the voucher program and some of the other things such as that have their own line items, so we don't hide how much we're actually spending to educate students who've never been in a public school, and also to educate people in schools that don't accept everyone. There's a couple important items on the back about supporting staff development programs. In the past, we had grants that set aside money each year to do professional development, both within the 180-day teacher calendar, and then also during the summer. We still have managed to do a lot of those things, but we do it through our Superintendent Study Council and other activities where we just free up money from our corporation funds. One of the items is to re-examine the use of student assessments. And as I said on my bullet points, I think we use those tests to try to rank ourselves and compare districts to one another when that's not really what they should be used for, in our opinion. And, you know, there's a piece in here about opposing vouchers, which, you know, we take a strong stand against that. And then opposing the tax credits, which you could say, oh, you know, it's not your money, but when it's a credit for a taxpayer who donates to a scholarship granting organization that gives tuition support to private school students, it does reduce the pool of money that could be used for other things in the state, whether it's public education or fixing roads and bridges. So an interesting list from the ISBA. I also put at your workstation today Dr. McCormick's priorities, which came out late Thursday after the board packet had already been sent out. And I was happy to see that she put an emphasis on vaping education, which you know we've done here, as we've seen a lot of people out there marketing to our youth on these products that might taste good but really are harmful to their health, and then also a couple of other things. So that's just for your perusal. So we're going to take a trip to Indy. We're going to do our best to share with legislators our concerns, and we'll report back on how that goes.
Thank you, Dr. Rocco. All right, moving on to our Director of Human Resources, Terry Mucha.
Thank you very much. We're recommending the following certified and classified appointment and resignations be accepted.
So moved.
A motion from Mr. Marshall, and I will second that motion. Any comments or questions regarding the personnel recommendations? I'll let you take a look through that. You have none? Okay. None. Okay. We'll take a vote on that. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. I also have the professional leave request for those 20 teachers to go down to Ed for Red, and also 2 for our technology department, professional leaves.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Ms. Suze,
Second.
and a second from Mr. Marshall. Any comments or questions? Hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you again. We have tonight our middle school athletic agenda and a report. Unfortunately, 2 of our athletic directors came down with a bug, but gallantly stepped up to the plate is Mr. Gray, who's going to give the middle school athletic report.
All right.
You also have this information in your packet. Kaler, I've been the AD there 8 years and in the corporation 29 on the Dallas. All right, so for our participants for the fall, you can see the numbers there. Kaler had a total of 162 athletes for fall. We had some pretty significant numbers in boys and girls cross country. Then here's the list of the coaches. And the good news is most of these coaches were pretty successful in some way, shape, or form this fall, which brings us to our fall athletic highlights. Clark was known for their football. They were 5-0 conference record this year, and I think they were 7-0 overall. They went undefeated. I think one team scored a touchdown on them once. So they were pretty significant this year. Clark Rimmer, excuse me. Volleyball, they also had a pretty good season in conference. They were the conference season champs and the conference tourney champs. The 8th grade was co-conference in season, and I think finished 2nd or 3rd in the tournament in volleyball. Grimmer also pretty successful, again in combination with Clark. The football team did extremely well. Volleyball had an extremely good season as well, finishing 5-1 in both. Cross country, boys were 3rd in the conference overall. And then Kaler, I couldn't all fit it on one slide, so boys and girls cross country, went 6-0 in the conference. Both took 1st in the conference tournament. That's 3 years in a row. 3 years in a row they won conference, went undefeated, and 3 years in a row won the conference tournament. So pretty successful cross-country season from the middle schools. Our football team didn't do fair so well. However, our volleyball teams, did pretty well as well. They ended up finishing 1st in the tournament and 2nd at the LC Invite and 3rd in the conference behind Clark. For the finances, here are the finances: gate receipts, event workers, other expenses, and then items they hope to purchase in the future.
Is that in this packet, though?
Yes. And then Grimmer's expenses. book. Not necessarily hired, but permanently in the book. So as soon as we reach a certain number of participants, we'd like to just be able to hire that coach. Any questions? Football scoreboard. Yes. Okay. Was that this year or last year? End of last year. This was the first year we got to use our ball. Yes. I was just wondering, this was pretty antiquated then. Yeah. And the one indoor is as bad. I actually tried to change the bulbs. If some of the bulbs are out, if I could change the bulbs, we could get it to last another year or two. But they're in tubes, so I can't get my fat fingers in there. And/or they're rusted, so I can't get the bulb out at all. So, yeah, we've had to do some work on it, but at this point, we're at basically the end of what we can do to it, keep it functional. It still functions. It's just some of the bulbs are out. Like, I can't tell if it's a 6 or an 8, but we're working on it. So, it works.
I just have a statement to make. You know, I've been kind of living in my own little world for many, many years and have not had any children in my home. And now I have this 12-year-old and a 13-year-old. And it has brought just a, oh, I don't know, just, I'm overwhelmed at the commitment that our coaches have to these students. It's just amazing. Um, and like one of the coaches said to me, it's hard to be an athlete. And I'm like, oh my gosh. And I don't mean to say that the teachers have not been good. I'm not saying that at all. But I just know you're here to represent the athletic department. And, you know, the commitment they give to us is very much appreciated.
Yeah, and we've been very fortunate to keep most of the coaches that we've had in for a few seasons because, nowadays it's harder and harder to keep coaches having to deal with the parents all the time. So we've been extremely fortunate. And then when we do have to replace a coach, we have been able to replace them with someone of equal caliber or higher. We just hired a 7th grade boys basketball coach who happens to be a former student of mine, former player here at Lake Central, played professionally in Europe, doing an outstanding job with the boys now. So, yeah, real tall. The boys like it when he goes slam dunks there in front of them. Any other questions? No, thank you. Thank you.
Thank you. We're very fortunate to have athletic directors like Mr.
Thank you. Appreciate it.
Thank you, Bill.
Good job.
And we shall continue on. I think you have one more item, right?
I do,
Correct?
but I am going to turn that item over to Mr. James down there, who is much better with figures than I am, and he said he would do the summer school. But I wondered if I could just thank the schools and the staff for the Veterans Day programs that they had last Friday and last Monday. I've never been in a school system with such a commitment to our vets, and it was beautiful to see, really beautiful. And I said this to our principals, but I had somebody at Kaler sit down by me and say, I've never been so touched in my life as when those kids welcomed me into the gym.
That's great.
Pretty cool.
That's really
So
cool.
thank you to our teachers and principals and staff for some great programs.
That's great. That's great to hear. Thank you.
I will defer because it's also on my agenda under my section, so I will just talk about it at that point.
All right, sounds good. We will defer it till your section. Moving on to our Director of Primary Education, Teresa Schoen.
Thank you. My first item is to seek your approval of the professional leave request that were in your packet and also the revisions.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Marshall.
Second?
We have a second from Dr. Malco. Any comments or questions regarding those professional leave requests? See, that's hard to pick. Which one do you know, when I hear it on both, out of both ears, then I'm like, okay, who was first? So it's,
As long as
you gotta time it just right.
You did well, you did well.
All right, any comments or questions? None? Hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My second item is, as I do each year, share some information about the early literacy and
That's awesome.
Nice.
That's great to hear.
Yeah.
All right, any comments, any questions?
Well, no, it's nice to hear the diversity that you have focused on with these books. That's good.
Yeah.
Question for you, because you talk about the reading and how important it is, and I've heard that we no longer have accelerated reader at the elementary. Can you explain how that happened?
Well, a lot of it came out of Donelon. Those, the research behind it is that it discourages children from learning to love reading just for the reading. Plus, the program is very expensive, and our money could be used better in another way. We learned lots of different ways that teachers can encourage and make kids accountable for their reading. That did not involve the tests. When we looked at the tests, they were very low-level questions. Often kids cheated or could pass the test by just, the questions you could just make common sense. So we tried it with accelerated reader 1 year, and with everyone being on board with it. This year is the year without accelerated reader, and in the spring we will decide what the final decision on accelerated reader.
So when you say we, was this a committee that looked at it?
Yes.
Okay. So you're trying away from accelerated reader for 1 year, and then you're going to reevaluate if you want to go back into it? Okay. Because I believe they continued it at the middle school, correct?
Yes.
Right. I don't, I know it wasn't a perfect program, but it seemed to motivate a lot of children, and maybe for the wrong reason, like you're saying, but I was just curious, so thank you.
It's my contention that it motivates the kids that can read anyway, and the kids that are reluctant, it tends to push them away.
Could be. Something to think about.
We think that great literature and teachers that encourage reading and have great conversations with kids is way more effective than a program that's expensive. And not always encouraging to.
Yeah, how expensive of a program is it for the elementary?
It is, was it $7.45?
It's close to $8.
Okay. All right, thank you.
Well, I like these books, because I'm just looking through them real quick, and there's a lot of diversity in these books.
Isn't that a neat, that looks like.
That one, right there, the Rosie Revere, the engineer.
Yeah.
And then I Am Human, the Book of Empathy, over here.
That's a great
That's-
We had a few that kind of touched on some social emotional, and obviously not all ethnicity, but Rosie Revere engineer
Yeah,
shows girls that they can be anything they want to be.
yeah.
Do you know how to sing the song Rosie the Riveter? I bet Mr. DeLauder knows it.
Mr. DeLauder, are you telling the truth?
I have the music if you need it, Doug.
Good answer, good answer. So
Perhaps the next meeting.
so these were purchased for first and second graders? Do you think there's gonna be anything done maybe at the third grade level, or?
If I could find a grant
Yeah,
to pay for it, this grant specifically had to be used for K1 and 2.
K1 and 2, okay. That'd be great, that would be awesome if there was something like it available for the other grade levels too. All right, thank you. All right, moving on
This is English and Spanish.
to our Director of Secondary Education, Sarah Castaneda.
Thank you. For my first item, I am seeking your approval for the professional leave request, the revised copy that you received this evening.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malkow, and I will second that motion. Any comments or questions regarding those professional leave requests? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. And then for my next item, I just wanted to update you on the proposed new high school accountability model. Last year during the legislative session, the General Assembly created an accountability panel. So this came out of the legislature. And basically what they tasked the panel with was aligning the school letter grades for the high school with the new graduation pathways and the components of that plan. The group included some members of the State Board of Education. There were also some members of the General Assembly. There were some reps from higher education institutions, some business and industry leaders, and then also a representative sampling of some superintendents, principals, and teachers. So So they did try to put together a group of stakeholders, for sure. They met about 5 times over a 4-month period, and they approved the recommendations that you saw in the board packet with a vote of 12 to 3, and they presented this to the State Board of Education a couple of weeks ago. What their recommendation is, and this is not final, it's still something that's going to be discussed in this upcoming legislative session, is that the high school accountability metrics include a 15% weighting on academic proficiency. So testing would account for 15% of the school letter grade. They're proposing a change where the test that would be used is the 11th grade assessment, which for the state of Indiana is the SAT for most schools because the state already pays for the PSAT for us from 10th and 11th grade. They could choose to use the ACT as well. We've used both. It's not really a big change to us, whichever way they decide to go if they use it. They also alluded in the document to possibly walking that back to the 8th grade level and having the PSAT 8 or the pre-ACT 8 being used so that way there would be longitudinal data between the middle school and the high school, which is something that we've been lacking at least at the state level, to be certain. It would not include any growth, only performance. So it would just be simply the quantity of kids passing the English and the math portions of SAT or ACT.
What was that last thing you said?
It would not include growth.
It would not include growth.
Correct. Because if all we have in the system is an 11th grade test, they can't calculate it. Now, we've calculated growth on a lot of things as of late, so I'm not saying it's not a possibility, but at this time, it does not include growth in that 15%.
Thank you.
The other factor, there's 3 of them. The second one is the high school graduation indicator. They weighted that also at 15%. Something that's different is they no longer would count students who received a waiver as part of the calculation. And then the last component was the biggest, that's college and career readiness. They weighted that at 70%. And the way that they're going to measure that is with 3 different ways per this proposal. The first one is that they're going to look at enrollment, and this is geared more towards college or sort of training type programs. And the percent of students that would count towards enrollment could be the ones that enroll in a post-secondary institution without remediation courses, earn a short or long-term workforce certificate at 15 credits, which is CTE credits is what they're looking at, or an STGEC, which is the Statewide Transfer General Education Core Certificate, and that typically reflects dual credit AP and IB. Employment would be the percent of students who earn an industry-recognized certificate, who earn also that shorter long-term workforce certificate at 15 credits, or are employed after graduation in an apprenticeship or comparable on-the-job training program. And then the last part that would comprise that 70% could be enlistment, and that would be the percent of students who would enlist and serve in the military with a qualifying ASVAB score. The other part of it that would not count towards accountability, but that they proposed as part of this panel, is that they want high schools to create district dashboards that include a variety of metrics, and that, in their opinion, would take the place of the school improvement plans at the high school level. So it's not weighted for anything in the model, but they did have some discussion that perhaps later on, after high schools had the dashboard set up, that is something that could be added to the model. So they had quite a bit of feedback on this proposal. I'll just hit the highlights with you, so that way you sort of know what's brewing as we're heading into this legislative session. The ISTA and many others like the decreased emphasis on testing, with the test only counting towards 15%. And we've talked quite a bit about the issues with testing across the state in Indiana. On the flip side, they felt that the graduation indicator should be much higher than 15%. If the goal of this panel was to truly tie accountability to graduation pathways, and there is so much now that's going into tracking the graduation pathways, then they felt 15% was not enough weight to be given to that factor. They also didn't like the fact that waivers were excluded. When waivers were created, they were created for students who struggle, and a lot of students who have identified disabilities that prevent them from doing as well as their peers on things like assessments, or in some of the more rigorous classes that now would count for that box 3 in pathways. If you're taking the waivers off the table, then that excludes a good portion of the high school population that really need that. It's the whole reason the waivers were created even back under the ISTEP system. They said if individual districts seem to be abusing the waivers and giving too many, then deal with them, but don't punish the masses for the
Exactly.
mistakes of the
Exactly.
districts, is what they said. There also are a lot of concerns about the new college and career indicator metrics. First off, the 70% weight that's put upon it. Secondly, how is this all going to be tracked? A lot of the principals and superintendents who spoke out at the State Board of Ed meeting said that a lot of the data they seem to be asking for are things that are not under a high school's control. For example, if a student goes to a college, we don't know if they're enrolled in any remedial classes. So if you have that wording in this and this becomes law, how are we supposed to know that they were assigned remedial classes once they enrolled in their college courses? We know they've enrolled in that college, but we have no way of seeing that college or university system to check that. They also asked, when will it be tracked? At the end of high school graduation, we have a lot of verbal information from the students about where they may have enrolled in college, what occupation they're going to be pursuing, whether or not they're joining the military. But once they leave, it's very hard to gather any of that information. So how are we going to do this? Is it just the self-reporting of the students? And then is there any accountability on the schools to go out and verify that? Which again, once they leave, is very tricky for us to do. There also then, if we have to wait till they actually start that post-secondary career, we need this information within a pretty short time frame in order to issue letter grades. So what is the time frame for gathering all of this data was another big concern that they had. They also felt that a lot of the metrics that are being used for that college and career indicator are things that are not really reflective of the pathways. That STGEC certificate that I told you, I've never heard of that.
I was going to say.
BJ Watts, who is on the State Board of Education and was one of the chairs of this committee, had never heard of it. He works for Evansville, which has a 22,000 student population and several very large high schools. So clearly it's not something that a lot of the major players are using across the state of Indiana. There's no mention of academic or technical honors, which honestly, those are very good metrics for graduates who are probably going to go into the trades with certificates, who are going to go into colleges and not need remediation. But that wasn't put in there, even though it is a part of the pathways. The workforce certificate that they mentioned in the model requires 15 credits. In graduation pathways, the requirement is only 12. So why is that 3 more credits than what we're using as a requirement for graduation? And then they also felt, the people who spoke out, that the employment options that are given don't reflect a lot of potential other graduates who are going into the workforce. It's focused a lot on industry certifications and apprenticeships, and those are very valuable positions that we want to see our graduates fill, but it doesn't give any value to people who maybe want to go into agriculture, who want to work in industry, who maybe want to go into the family business. Those are all valuable, and you're taking the value of those kids out of the equation by not listing those types of things in this. So they felt that the accountability model had some good merits to it, but they need to go back and look at the graduation rating, and they also need to go back and look at how we're going to measure this college and career readiness. Everyone supported the direction they're heading and taking the emphasis off testing. They're just not quite sure how this really truly aligns to grad pathways, which was what the panel was supposed to be doing. So the State Board of Ed talked through this quite a bit at their November 4th meeting, and then what they decided was there's 2 things that need to happen. The State Board of Ed needs to send on to the General Assembly, and then the General Assembly needs to look at it during the session and decide if they're going to turn this into law. And so what the State Board of Ed decided was, since they had a lot of concerns about what was in there, that at their December 6th meeting that's coming up next month, they're going to talk more about this and make sure that they send a memo to the General Assembly that says, here's what we think are positives of this, here's where we see issues, and these are some proposals we have for making it possibly a better plan. And so that's where we're at with the situation.
Great. Well, thank you. You have a question?
Wow.
I think I'm tired, just.
Oh, geez. Well, you seem to have a very good handle on what's going on. So do you plan to speak out or write letters, or what are you, I mean, not just you, but your colleagues in the field?
I think that Baining and rats are the 2 members of the General Assembly who are on this. I feel that because in the end, they're the ones who are going to have to make the final decision, that those are the two people to reach out to. It seemed at the State Board of Education meeting, because B.J. Watts was there, Byron Ernest, Pat Mapes, they were all part of this panel. They have a very good understanding of it, and I feel that they'll have a good recommendation to the General Assembly. But that December 6th meeting will be pretty critical.
Okay, but do you, as curriculum leaders within the state, do you have the opportunity to share your input, or go down and speak, or do you know how they're handling that?
I've never actually gone down to speak at the State Board of Education meeting or at the General Assembly, so no, I don't know how to do that. I've definitely written my fair share of emails sharing my
Okay.
concerns about the situation.
Well, that's good, because it's quite a drive down there, as you know, but, yeah.
I have a question. The the longitudinal dashboard, what are your feelings on that?
I like the metrics they have in there. You know,
Yeah.
we've had discussions here about how it is unfortunate we just get judged by that one measure, and so we do like the dashboard concept. It's something that we've been looking at here at Lake Central after Dr. Malcolm made the recommendation, and so I'm all for that. I just am not sure how you put accountability weight on that until we have more time to get
Yeah.
a full grasp of it. But
Yeah.
I like it.
Okay, yeah, I was just want to get your feelings on it, and plus the accountability standpoint, how do you measure that? It's interesting.
Right.
So,
Right.
any other questions?
I did want to share with you that there's a publication, and I actually got copies for all the board members, but I left them at home. So, but I believe it's a quarterly publication. It's called Indiana Business. And there was an article in there that indicating that Schmidt and Associates are writing the curriculum for architectural internships. So I thought that was very interesting that Schmidt and Associates is on top of that, because maybe we could actually get some special attention, since we spend a lot of our money with Schmidt and Associate. It would be nice to have some of our high school students have that opportunity.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm sure it'll be a very rare program out there. So,
Okay.
okay.
Good to hear. Is that it, Sarah?
That's all.
All right, thank you very much. And moving on to, I see Becky Gramales here, and she only has one professional leave request.
She does, for a school psychologist to attend an all-state workshop in Indianapolis in December.
Okay. There's a motion from Mr. Marshall, and I'll second that motion. Any comments or questions? Hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes. Thank you very much on that. And moving on to our Director of Business Services, Rob James.
Thank you, Mr. Baxo. My first item is to seek your approval for the professional leave requests in the board packet.
Move to approve.
A motion from Ms. Suze,
Second.
and a second from Dr. Malko. Any comments or questions regarding those professional leave requests? All right, hearing none, let's take a vote. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My second item has to do with an updated Neola contract. Included in your packet was some information about how they're changing their platform for some of their publishing, and so they needed to update their terms and conditions of the contract. Dollar amount that we pay them for their updates is staying the same. So we just seek your approval to approve those updated terms and conditions that were included in your packet.
Move to approve.
We have a motion from Mr. Marshall.
Second?
Okay.
Go ahead. Take
Okay.
Dr. Malcolm.
She beat me.
No.
Okay, second from Ms. Suze. Any comments or questions regarding the updated Neola contract? All right, hearing none, all those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. Each year around this time, for the last few years, we've requested the board for an appropriation reduction from what was approved by the DLGF for this calendar year. And the reason why we do this is sometimes we're going to have unspent dollars at the end of the year, and unless we tell them otherwise, the DLGF is going to presume that we spent every dollar. And by doing a formal appropriation reduction, those dollars can then roll to the following year to be put into the calculation of what they would approve us for this instance for 2020. So in your board packet, I presented a resolution that would request our initial approved budgets for our operations fund, our referendum operating fund, and our rainy day fund for the amounts listed. And just the reasonings for For our operations fund, a year and a half ago when there was this transition to these new funds, weren't really sure how it was all going to play out, but we have been able to steer more dollars into the education fund and less into the operations fund, so that budget can get reduced. The referendum operating fund, it just, as I explained in the packet, it works on all of our budgets work on a calendar year. We more so operate on a fiscal year. So they approved us for the entire 8 million plus that we would get in a 12-month period. We've only received about half of that, and we've only begun to spend part of that with the new teacher contracts. So this would be just to reduce that amount so it could all roll into the following fiscal year. We will intend to spend those dollars received by the end of June / the end of August with the teacher's contract. So, and then for our rainy day fund, we did not spend any of our rainy day funds, so we're reducing that. So I seek your approval for the appropriation reduction resolution.
So moved.
All right, we have a motion from Dr. Malko,
Second?
and second from Ms. Suze. Any comments or questions regarding that resolution? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. As we've talked about, the teacher appreciation grant is due to be distributed to our certified staff members. We will be distributing those funds in a special payroll on this Friday, November 22nd. And if you recall, back in 2017, the General Assembly changed the law and pretty much said that certified staff members that are not directly in the classroom are ineligible to receive TAG, Teacher Appreciation Grant money. This team, administrative team, feels that these people who have been carved out and excluded are just as important to the development of those students. And as we have in the past, we seek the board's approval to give a stipend to those people who were included in your board packet, those other certified staff members, for the same dollar amount as the people who are receiving the grant.
Move to approve.
All right, we have a motion from Ms. Suze. We have a second from Mr. Marshall. Okay, any comments or questions? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. My next item is to seek your approval for the donations that were noted in your board packet.
So moved.
A motion from Mr. Marshall, and I will second that motion. Any comments or questions regarding the donations? All right, hearing none. All those in favor? Aye. Opposed? Motion passes.
Thank you. And my final item is just to give the board an update on our summer school reimbursement. We submitted a claim for our costs, and our claim was for a little over $413,000 for summer school for 2019. Our reimbursement came in at approximately $334,000, which is right around 80 to 81%. That, subtracting the two numbers, we have just under approximately $80,000 of then unreimbursed summer school expenditures that in essence we have to eat and comes out of our funds. So that 80% is straight the same percentage for all school districts across the state. The state grant for summer school was $18.3 million, but there was over $22.7 million worth of expenditures. So then they prorate that down and cut it. So it's around, again, school districts got cut, and so in essence, there was about an $80,000 expenditure this year for summer school.
I think Mr. Gandolfi used to get back a higher percentage.
He's going to say that. Mr. James, was it approximately the same amount as in past years?
It's been 75,
Now
80.
It's 81.
What happens with the program is you could you say how much you think your costs are going to be. You estimated in the spring, and then some people drop off and don't offer summer school at all because they see, hey, we're estimated to get 60% or 70%, and people who are really tight and can't afford that will say, well, we can't afford to take the hit in the expenditures for that. So it is a cost that we look at each year. but it's a program for the kids.
Hey, it's still close. Still close to the past year, so.
I think it said, the letter, the appropriation was not sufficient to reimburse costs at 105%. So, we'll see. Maybe one day in the future. But, summer school programs do expand, and that's more cost. But, and I also just want to note that we can't even claim all the costs that we incur as part of the claim. When it comes to the salaries for the teachers and for the aides, we're only allowed to claim the gross salaries and not the related taxes that we have to pay on top of that. So we're already taking a hit right from the start. So the 80% is just of the difference of our claim. Theoretically, it costs us even more than that. So.
All right, well, thank you. Thank you very much.
Any questions?
Any questions?
Well, I have a question just about the effectiveness of the summer school, and I know that we always talk about this, and I don't know that you're prepared to answer that tonight, ladies, but I'm always curious about the growth that the students make during the summer school.
And I can just make a comment on elementary. It is only 20 days.
I know.
And if we do an assessment just during summer school year, that's now reduced to 18 days. Because 1 day of assessment, 1 day of another. And really our goal in summer school for elementary is not so much to be moving them, because you really can't make a lot of growth in a short time, but to just hold the tide on the summer school.
Right, right. That's a big one. And philosophically, I disagree that it should be after school immediately. I think an August jump start would be much more effective,
Oh,
but,
I absolutely agree with you.
yeah.
We've had success.
Mm-hmm.
Parents are doing
Vacations, yeah.
Oh, yeah.
So,
It'd be very difficult to do it right then in August. It would be so difficult, just for that
Unless-
fact.
Unless they got used to it. I don't know
Yeah.
if it's a tradition that you need to change, or, I don't know. Okay.
One of the things I'd like just to add on that is that of the $413,000 in costs that we claimed, I think around 325 or 330,000 of that was payment to the Indiana Online Academy for high school students taking some online courses during the summer. So that's not all salaries for staff that we have here. Probably 75% of it is high school related students taking additional courses, coursework, or taking courses online, so then they could free up more time in their schedule here at school.
Yeah.
How much was that amount?
I think around 325,000 of the 413.
Okay, wow.
So our kids are getting a lot of use out of that, which means, again, it allows them to take additional classes here from the course offerings we have here. So
Is that still done in the, what is the name of that? Hoosier Academy, or no, that's
it's
not-
called Indiana Online Academy.
Indiana
It's administered through the Central Indiana Service Center.
Right, okay. All right,
That's all I have.
All right.
thank you.
Thank you very much. Mr. James, thank you. Moving on to our public comments, and we have two public comments. I'll call them both up at the same time. Louis Talent and Susan Schweitzer.
Did you call her Louis? Did you call her Louis?
Did I say Louis? I said Louise. Did I say Louis?
You said Louis.
Oh.
I thought you said.
Oh, sorry about that. I think I called you Louis. Sorry.
first of all, board
Oh, that's so special.
thank you very much for,
Oh, thank you.
Sue and I and Milky, all members of the Lake Central Education Foundation Board. And you mentioned working in partnership or cooperative. One of the things that we want to express is that we too are collaborative and want to work in partnership. So we had this idea to go ahead and try to contact each one of our legislators with a postcard. So we had one of our board members make a saying. Sue worked her magic and came up with
is also concerned about public education. So that brings in not only our educators, but also the business communities that are on our board, so that we can say we are definitely concerned about what is going on at the state level. So we just wanted to share with you what our foundation board, and we appreciate all the support that you always provide for us. And another cooperative effort is today, Sue, and thank you very much for us being able to go around. And in our offices, we were able to provide, we want all parents, teachers, staff members, bus drivers, everybody to wear a little red ribbon. So if you don't have a red shirt, put a little red on to say that we support public education. This was done, again, for a collaborative effort with the foundation, paying for some of this item, FCCLA Kids, Family, Community, Career Leaders of America, Community Service Project, and LCTA supporting. So just thank you so much for all the work that you do. Good luck tomorrow, Dr. B, because it's quite a deal. So,
Thank you, guys, thank you.
Oh, very nice. Nice, nice, nice.
Thank you very much. Moving on to our board comments and consideration of future agenda items. And I'm going to start with Dr. Malco, because you probably wanted to say something about American.
Oh, this is American Education Week, and obviously this is the week to celebrate public education and what it brings. And if you know, historically, it was only the rich kids that received an education. And then finally, our founding fathers said, no, everybody deserves an education. So it's very important that we support the premise of a public education. Really appreciate your efforts, ladies. I know it takes a lot of time, but through collaboration, we can do it. No, I do have other questions, but no, I'm fine, thank you.
Okay.
I'll take care of them.
Table them till next meeting? Okay. Okay, Mr. Marshall?
I've been thinking about something. Earlier during Teresa's presentation, there was a term bantered around, Rosie the Riveter. I'm going to throw out a trivia question. Does anyone in the audience know in what historical time period this term first originated? Anyone?
Oh, we got an answer here.
Go ahead.
Mr. Bigley?
Pardon?
World War II.
WW2.
World War II, yeah.
Okay.
All right.
Yeah.
So what do they get? What's their prize?
We'll talk after.
All right.
Thanks, Sean.
All right, is that it?
Yeah.
Thank you. Ms. Susan?
I just want to say good luck to all those going to Indianapolis tomorrow. And I did venture out of St. John, and I did go to some of the Veterans Day programs that are surrounding.
Oh, here we go. That was directed right at me, wasn't it?
Did you get out of Dyer?
I did get out of Dyer.
Oh, good.
I did.
They were all fabulous, but Mr. Begley, Mr. DeLauder did sing. Fabulous job. Sorry you were having microphone issues, but it did not take away from the presentation one bit. So, great job. That's it.
Okay, thank you.
Happy
Thank you.
Thanksgiving to everyone, too.
So, yeah, I want to echo your same sentiments about tomorrow. Good luck to everybody going down there tomorrow. And the Veterans Day programs were awesome. I got to go to Lake Central, the high school. I did go to Coling. I saw theirs as well. So there was quite a few. I will make it to your schools next year. I promise.
Yes.
I promise. But that's all I have. That's all I have for this evening. Moving on to our board calendar of future activities. Dr. Baracco.
Thank you. Continue to recommend to the board to check our calendar, but a couple of things that jump out at me. Wednesday night, athletic banquet, 6 o'clock in the town square. And we only meet once in December, and that's on the 16th.
Once in December.
And
that's it.
Same time, location to be determined.
Okay. I'm looking for a motion to adjourn.
So moved.
We have a motion from Dr. Malco
Second.
and a second from Ms. Suze. So, all those in favor? Aye. We are adjourned.